I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I would like to ask for a moment of silence. One for Peter Sepko, who passed away on September 8th, 2022. He was a graduate of Southington High School, and he worked as a physical education teacher and a coach in Southington for 36 years until his retirement in 2006. And I'd also like us to remember Walter Hushak, who passed away on August 28th, 2022. Mr. Hushak was a graduate of Lewis High School, a decorated World War II veteran, and though he wasn't an employee of the Southington School, he was a frequent and very valued visitor and volunteer for many years at all our schools in the district. So a moment of silence for both of them, please. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes from September 8th.
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Yes,
I'd like to add an item to the agenda, please.
if you would.
Item 9D, student expulsion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Oshana. Okay. For our public communications, we're going to start with our students. So, students,
Good evening, board. Hello, everyone. We are going to try to report as quickly as we can. So from the high school, the Southington High School Blue Knight Advisor and Portfolio Program is a class that builds off last year's capstone curriculum. This past Wednesday, students and teachers had the opportunity to get to know one another in an engaging way and reviewed grade level procedures and expectations. Opportunities existed to make a connection between students and the teacher and have an advisor or mentor to be able to interact with, both academically and emotionally. This will be coupled with creating the capstone portfolio. A majority of our clubs have begun meeting over the last few weeks, including Key Club, FBLA, DECA, Writers Club, the GSA, and many more. It has been incredible seeing the excitement our students have to be involved in the community, especially our new freshmen. Drama Club is excited to say that we will be doing 2 musicals this year, and rehearsals have begun for the fall musical on Wednesday. The fall show is the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, which is an incredibly funny show that we hope everyone will come enjoy in December. The College and Career Fair was this Tuesday. It was highly successful, and a lot of students from all grades explored many different colleges and career options. There were a multitude of different colleges expanding from Maine to Connecticut to Maine. And lastly, the Cyber Knights are holding their annual STEM for All event for the first time since the start of COVID. The students and mentors will be displaying cool STEM activities for no charge. It is open to all age groups and is this Saturday, the 24th, from 10 to 2 at the Southington Drive-In.
Good evening, board and everyone in attendance. The Blue Knights marching band season is off to a great start. In addition to looking great in their new uniforms, thank you to the support of the Board of Education members, the band took first place in Division 4 Open at last Saturday's competition at Maloney High School in Meriden. They won caption awards for Best Music, Best Visual, and Overall Effect. The band is off to compete at Trumbull High School this weekend. Stay tuned for updates. On to our sports report. The Blue Knights football team has an undefeated 2-0 record to start the season after a 49-21 victory in the home opener last Friday versus Hall High School in front of an enthusiastic Southington student body and crowd. We would also like to say congratulations to Coach Drury on his 100th win here at Southington. The team travels to Greenwich High School this Saturday afternoon at 3 p.m. for an intersectional matchup. In other intersectional matchup, the Blue Knights girls soccer team hosts Ridgefield this Saturday at 11:30 a.m. in their home opener. Good luck to all teams.
All right, good evening, board and everyone in attendance. I'll be talking about the other schools in the district. So starting off with DePaulo, on Tuesday, DePaulo hosted our first in-person open house in 3 years, and it was so great to see all the new DePaulo families and share with them all the great things that have been happening at DePaulo in the past couple of years. We also asked for food donations that evening and were able to collect over 300 items that will be donated to Southington families in need. Students interested in the leadership program at DePaulo will be trained in leadership skills this coming Saturday at Camp Soper. Approximately 200 students expressed an interest in taking a leadership role at DePaulo and in our community. DePaulo's Garden Club will continue to sell their cut flowers and vegetables from their garden directly next door to the school every Wednesday from 3 to 5. So stop by and make sure to show your support. Moving on to Kennedy, Kennedy's open house was also a great success. JFK piloted a college fair-like format, and feedback provided during open house was very positive, but we also want to invite parents and teachers to participate in a survey to gather more information to ensure if the new format was favorable or not. Clubs and athletics are underway at JFK, and it's great to see the school live again with activities after dismissal. Our first PTO meeting was held Wednesday night. Mr. Giddeny spoke to parents about JFK's intervention and enrichment block, known as K Block, and parents had an opportunity to meet the new assistant principal, Mr. D. Dominizo. JFK is thankful for the PTO and all they do for the students.
Thank you.
Thank you, student. Do any board members have any questions for the students? No? Okay. Moving right along. I'm going to open up the communications for the Board of Education with a statement. A resource document that was not properly vetted was distributed in a 10th grade English class. We acknowledge that our processes for classroom learning were not followed regarding this material, and we look to this to be a learning experience for all. But I resent that a personnel matter regarding one of our teachers and our schools have been turned into a political platform by those who have non-educational agendas. In my 15 years on this board that I've had the pleasure to serve, I have never seen a disruption like this in our district. Our world is changing, and we want to prepare our students for the world beyond Southington High School. As a board, we support our teachers and our staff, and I look forward to moving on and getting back to what we do best, providing the best public education for the students of Southington Public Schools. Thank you. Do any of my fellow board members wish to speak? Mrs. Carmody.
Yes. I have been upset to see our school system, students, and administration and our community maligned on national news this past week. We strive to maintain continuous improvement in our educational system. Our teachers worked diligently to navigate our students through the pandemic, which was an extremely difficult time for them. We must allow our students to become informed, develop critical thinking skills, and apply them to the society that we live in today. It is a very, very important skill that they need. We recognize the concerns that some people have, and we need to work together, all of us, to correct them. Let us celebrate the successes of our school system, not malign them, and recognize the hard work of our teachers, administrators, and our students. Please, thank you.
Mr. Brzezowski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had the opportunity to attend the open house at DePaulo, not to change subjects so rapidly, but it was an absolute great time. My son's super excited to be there, and the team over there did a fantastic job. I want to first start by saying thank you to those in the community that have provided feedback and weigh in on the issues our town has experienced these past 2 weeks. Arguments for pros and cons, you are being heard. Second, thanks to the students that continue to speak up and spark conversation. You are the end users of the decisions that I, as a singular board member, have the honor of hearing, vetting, and ultimately voting on that impact policy and curriculum, affecting the education you receive in our schools. Last but arguably most important, thank you to the parents, families, teachers, and supportive staff. You all are playing vital roles in the education and upbringing of every student that walks through our doors. As we find our way through challenging times, these are the situations that will galvanize and bring to life how important it is to hear one another. With that, I want to reflect on some of the messages I've received this past week. What's next? Banning books? You should be ashamed of yourself. This type of thing doesn't belong in our schools. I am embarrassed for our town. While all of these statements share in commonality are misplaced on a singular issue. The issue is not what was being taught, it is how it was introduced. We follow specific guidelines in everything that we do, in our jobs, when we drive on our roads, even guidelines of how a public meeting is supposed to go. We have guidelines in our schools for curriculum. They are guidelines similar to that of a recipe. We have ingredients that need to be prepared, added at the right time, and need to have a consistent finished product that adheres to our creed of having students career or college ready. The finished product is taught throughout a student's time in grade school by different chefs, if you will. We have meetings between teachers to help with consistency of the finished product that we desire as a community. Lesson plans are the spices that are added into our curriculum recipe. The spices work when they are added at the right time and do not when added obscurely. When a teacher wishes to change the flavor of the dish, if you will, there is a guideline and protocol to discuss, vet, and understand the change. This is exceptionally most important when it is a polarizing topic. The reality of this situation was that some protocols are not followed as they are outlined and understood by me as a board member. That is the issue. If there are support documents that can hone or sharpen our students' mastery of material, I am always willing to hear about it. There are terms in theory that can cause divisiveness in instruction if it isn't carefully thought out and planned. Controversial subjects will always be present and relatable to instruction. This is how we become better at what we do, helping to prevent the missteps of our past and provide real-time application of lesson. This has to be done with transparency. It is your duty as a student, a parent, a teacher, a board member, and or a citizen of our fine town to be active in learning and teaching. We are all learning. We are all teaching. I believe that the very foundation of our American experiment is to hear each other, not agree, not teach based on what we think is truth, but to help present the entire situation at hand. This is a place for learning, not virtue signaling, not for being outraged. Through the uncomfortable situations comes hope, tenacity, and pursuit of being better versions of ourselves. I support wholeheartedly the staff and teachers of this amazing school system, the administration, their decision-making capacities, and individuals that make mistakes. We are always learning. Every day is a new opportunity. Every person deserves chances to learn through experience. The real issue is this particular situation has been propagated into something entirely different from where it started. I want to end with a quote from Gaiman. I hope that in this year to come, you make mistakes. Because if you are making mistakes, then you are making new things, trying new things, learning, living, pushing yourself, changing your world. You're doing things you've never done before, and more importantly, you're doing something. I hope that we move on from this with greater understanding of one another. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Oshana.
Thank you. I'm going to start up. An issue was brought to us, and the administration, following the policies of the board and that they have been established, is handling it and has handled it. I want to read from the board policy titled Curriculum, Controversial Issues. Students in the school shall have the opportunity for responsible discussion of controversial issues. Such free discussion requires that students have the following rights: the right to study any controversial issue which has political, economic, or social significance and concern, and which the student at his or her level should begin to have an opinion. The right to freely access all relevant information, including the material that circulates freely in the community. And the right to form and express his or her own opinion on controversial issues without jeopardizing the student's relationship with the teacher or the school. Instructional policy on controversial issues is stated by the Board of Education to protect teachers and school administrators from unwarranted attack by pressure groups and to ensure youth a well-balanced preparation for American citizenship. It's disappointing that this issue, and I'm not reading from the policy any longer, it's disappointing that this issue has been politicized to the extent that it has. Southington is a great town with a great school system filled with hardworking, dedicated teachers, students, and administrators. On a national level, we've been portrayed as the exact opposite. I trust our teachers and administrators to create the curriculum our local district uses. They do an amazing job of creating curriculum that prepare our students for the next phases of their lives, whether it be work or continued education. The teachers develop the curriculum and present that data to the curriculum committee of the Board of Education, where it's discussed and finalized, then brought to the full board for review and approval. We as board members get to read every piece of curriculum created, we raise questions or concerns, and are prepared at the next board meeting to discuss. In my entire time on this board, I cannot recall one time that this board or previous boards have had anything but rave reviews and compliments for the curriculum that has been created to help our students grow. Our teachers should be proud of what they do, and we should all be proud of them. As a board, we've worked hard to drive the need for our students to be critical thinkers. Without that skill, they will be at a huge disadvantage over others as they venture out into the real world of work and continued education. Our teachers need to present their lessons to our students devoid of political opinions, have open and honest discussions about that information, and allow our students to think, critically think, about what it is they're learning and discussing and come to their own opinions and decisions based on the facts and the data. We as board members are not and should not be in the classroom when lessons are taught. We are not certified or trained educators, although we have had some on this board. The teachers and administrators are those trained professionals. If there is an issue that comes up, those issues should be brought to the administration and they will be looked into. I, for one, give our students a lot more credit than others that they can listen, discuss, and process data on their own. We have to teach the students of today not only history, but the full history, whether it's something we like or dislike. And we must also teach our students about the current times that we are living in. That is important. The times that we are living in are going to become history. On the national news, this board has been accused of being a woke board of education and not doing our jobs. I'm not exactly sure what this means, but I take pride on being on this board and working with our staff to prepare our students with the knowledge, the lessons, and the experiences they need for the world that they will be entering. And I thank our teachers and administration for that. Lastly, we all say we want free and open debate, but that can only happen when we open this up to the full spectrum of ideas, not just those we agree with. That's not the American way.
Mr. Darrenowski.
Yes, getting back to board business here. I did or participated in the technology advisory committee meeting. It was handled through a Google/Zoom meeting, and it's the first discussion of the year. I think there's a lot yet to be done, but we're heading in the right direction, taking into account that we didn't have much to do over the last 2 years because of the pandemic. But a lot of enthusiasm, and I give the staff at the high school a lot of credit in getting this thing rolling again. I did happen to attend the Cable Advisory Committee meeting last night. Very interesting. I know what Lenny Marchicelli was referring to some years back when he was, the board representative. Not a lot to talk about because, it was a 5-minute meeting. And I'm not quite sure how long the committee is going to be intact because Frontier no longer has cable. And Cox is now considering getting out of the cable business. Not that they're not going to support what they have. It'll be streaming, but cable is going to be basically gone. So you have to wait and see. And next meeting is next month.
Will it be changed to the fiber committee if that is?
I have no idea.
asking.
Nobody seems to know because the information coming from Cox is, they're not very forthcoming in letting anybody know what's going on.
Okay, well, keep us posted. Thank you, Mr. Taranowski. Anyone else?
That's it.
Okay. All right, next on the agenda is the administration. Mr. Medancy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want an update related to the document distributed in a 10th grade English class at Southington High School. Some community members expected an immediate response indicating the district's position as soon as the district became aware of this document. It's important to know that when we address personnel issues, the district maintains a responsibility to abide by appropriate due process protocols as outlined within the provisions of the Board of Labor contract agreements that we have and Connecticut state labor laws. Further, as a district practice, we do not comment on personnel matters relative to specific individuals. However, it is important to address this situation, what we have learned from our extensive review, and my recommendations moving forward. I have heard from several parents and community members offering multiple perspectives and opinions on this situation. For every concern the district received over the use of this material, the district received an equal amount of correspondence expressing support for its use. In doing a comprehensive review of the material and gaining context to the decision-making that went into the use of the material in question, here is what we know. Past classes taught by this teacher have had challenges navigating conversations relative to novels that contain complex themes, vocabulary, and experiences of characters within. In anticipation of an effort was made to frame common language based on the instructor's direct observations of students misusing these terms in the past. While all these terms do not appear within our novels per se, many become part of the conversations due to the various identities and lived experiences of students within our community. These materials have never been used before, were not shared amongst colleagues, nor distributed in other classes other than those taught by this teacher. It was clear during our comprehensive review that the teacher had no intent on slanting student perception and instead was trying to create a space for classroom discussions that would be occurring throughout the year. As a result of our comprehensive review, the teacher now realizes that the sources utilized, developed these supplemental materials may not have been neutral in nature and recognizes the bias and controversial statements that some have taken issue with. My recommendations moving forward. First, it is my recommendation to the District Professional Development and Evaluation Committee that all staff teaching content that might touch on complex issues be provided further professional development in the teaching of such material in conjunction with the regulations outlined in Board of Education Policy 6144, controversial issues. Second, high school English and Social Studies departments will be provided additional collaboration time both within and across departments to vet sources together and share lesson materials. Third, as is our practice, whenever there may be a question as to the appropriateness of a particular document or video, ensure our teachers consult with colleagues teaching the same course, if necessary, the department leader or building administrator. This is causing stress for all of us, especially our teachers, staff, and students, as our school is now in the national spotlight over a 10th grade English document. Let me be clear, moving forward, I support this teacher and all teachers in our district. I support this teacher and all teachers in our district who are in today's world facing the reality of having to teach what can be considered at times controversial subjects and contemporary issues in our classrooms. This has been an unfortunate distraction for all of us, and we will not debate in the media or social media.
Good.
We pride ourselves at the Southington Public Schools as a place for our young people to access the best public education possible. We want parents to know that their children are in a safe and inclusive learning environment, and we must not rush to judgment. We should support and respect our teachers and their dedication to our students. Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is communication from the public. But through a show of hands, I'd like to know how many people are planning on talking.
Is that 30?
30. We're at 30.
I have signed in.
All right. So 30 of you have signed in to speak. 31 have signed in to speak. All right. In light of the fact that we have an agenda, and I realize you want to share your thoughts, we understand that. But we have an agenda of other business that we need to cover. In the interest of time, I am going to now limit your talk to 2 minutes so that we can get on to the rest of our board business. With that being said, all speakers, if you've never done this before, all speakers must identify themselves with their name and address, and you must be either a Southington resident or a parent or guardian of a Southington Public School student. No oral presentation shall include charges or complaints against any employee of the Board of Education, regardless of whether or not the employee is identified in the presentation by name or by another reference that tends to identify the individual. All charges or complaints against employees shall be submitted to the Board of Education under the provisions of the Board of Education policy. No boisterous conduct shall be permitted at any Board of Education meeting. Persistence in boisterous conduct shall be grounds for summary termination by me of that person's privilege to address. If necessary, I may direct those who are acting in a boisterous manner to leave the premises. Okay? We all good? You will each get 2 minutes. Mrs. Anastasio?
Yes, I have it too. Yes.
You got it? All right. Mrs. Anastasio is going to be timing. Let us all please be respectful.
I am the keeper of
All
time.
right. Whoever would like to speak, please do so.
Hello, my name is Travis Riccio. I'm a senior at Southington High School. Many of you may know of me as I spoke at many board meetings. Many of you know my opinion on CRT due to my conservative values, or whatever your preference term for it. CRT for many students is uncomfortable. The reason it singles out many students. Even if you don't realize it does, it does. I support my teachers behind me, but they need to follow the rules that are set in stone, not pass their political agenda on other students. I believe this teacher should be forgave as it was on mistake. I think their actions were very wrong and sneaky. I would understand if she brought this assignment to the Board of Education or administration first, not take it on her own hands to teach this touchy subject to a bunch of high school students. My parents and many other parents pay valuable tax dollars to teach students proper basic education, not why their kid is blamed for issues around the world due to them being white. No student should ever hear the term white privilege in a school, as it singles out students who cannot control their race. We are all the human race. No matter our color or our gender, we should all be equal. I'd love to thank my amazing teachers and administration behind me. You guys work so hard for our proper educations. Please follow our curriculum. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Tia Jones. I'm a 2014 graduate of SHS, and I was a teacher in a predominantly black and brown high school in North Carolina.
Excuse me, could I have your home address,
21
please?
Greenwood Drive.
Thank you.
I was a teacher in a predominantly black and brown high school in North Carolina and started before moving up here. And I, in 2019, started a company with my sister doing diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting, largely because of my experience in Southington schools. In 2016, you may remember, I wrote an editorial to the Record Journal discussing a situation that had happened in Southington High School. My main point of that editorial was that when conversations such as this are shut down in classrooms, it ruins the education for the whole. It means that everybody is not being educated to the best of their ability. And also to call for DEI training for teachers so that they are equipped to have these conversations. And the SHS mission statement agrees with me. It specifically states that SHS students construct knowledge and grow from challenges by asking questions and exploring ideas. But how can you really do this if you're never allowed to have controversial conversations with your peers? Whether we like it or not, these are real topics that people are discussing, hence all of you in this room right now, and students should be able to take part in that conversation. We need to be preparing kids for the world that they will soon be leading. I hear a lot about teaching arithmetic, reading, and writing, and that somehow they can't learn those things while talking about these topics. And I have two things to say to that. Are kids going to be more engaged in class talking about topics like this, where clearly there are polarizing beliefs, or are they going to be more engaged in class talking about a book like The Scarlet Letter without ever referencing anything exciting or interesting? And two,
Excuse me, your time is up. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for your time. My name is Jana Colati. I reside at 8 Doe Meadow Court in Southington here. I've lived all my adult life in this town. I've also served as a public school teacher and actually had the great experience at Southington High School. I'm not going to really read too much from this because I've adjusted. I've really reflected on the good things that I heard this evening. I do want to, however, point to the facts for everyone. There's so much information on our website that's provided. And the young lady who spoke before me talked about the mission statement. That is what guides our education. That is what guides the Board of Education. That is what guides our administrators. And not only the mission statement, but also a vision of the graduate. But what really strikes me, and which I think is most relevant tonight, is the fact that our school, under the guidance, under our leadership, has been working to reshape the future at Southington schools. And that's what's making our school system relevant. I believe it provides a foundation for further discussion. And I'm going to quote it because it's important. It's some of the things that Mr. Medancy spoke about. This is a major shift in how we teach, with an emphasis on the skills of critical thinking, creativity and innovation, communication, collaboration, and global citizenship. Students will continue their work in understanding the content, but will also be given opportunities to explore how those understandings impact and intersect with each other in our communities and the global economy. Now, to do these things, pursue a vision of a graduate, the mission statement, and to transform our educational system, all of the above, there must be academic freedom and free speech in our classroom. And I believe that's what I'm hearing here tonight. And I think that's why there's so many teachers that are feeling really good tonight. Thank you.
Michael Krasansky, 27 Hitching Post Drive. So I spoke on this topic at the last board meeting, so I won't deliver the same information, but the classroom handout, as you know, was of great concern to many parents in town and outside of town as well. The event was just one of many that are happening in public schools throughout the country. Parents are on edge and they want to return to basics in the school system. Parents want politics out of the classroom, and I appreciate you taking quick action and hearing parent feedback and investigating this issue, the handout that came up. I want to make sure that mechanisms are in place before the start of each school year to remind teachers about following the curriculum and bringing in outside controversial racial and sexual materials into the classroom. Those conversations should happen before the school year. What are the ground rules? Are teachers being told those? I'd like to have the teachers get advice before the start of the school year about what's allowed and what is not allowed, and what are the penalties for breaking the rules. I think there should be a professional development day centered around what materials are appropriate and what are not in the classrooms. And parents should understand and be educated about when these rules are broken, what are the repercussions, not in specific cases for a teacher, but what happens when the rules are broken. I believe teachers are being politicized at teacher training colleges, and politics and ideologies are being brought into the classroom by teachers and their agendas where they don't belong. The best teachers are ones that students cannot guess where they stand on the issues of the day. Teachers should be thinking or teaching our kids how to think and not what to think. I encourage parents to speak to your kids about what materials you feel are not appropriate in the classroom, and tell your kids to inform you when they witness something being presented by a teacher that is not appropriate. Thank you.
Good evening, John Moyes, 238 Stonegate Road, Southington, Connecticut. So as I contemplated speaking tonight, I was torn on what to speak on. The last meeting, I could not agree more with the vice chairman who said, for this to be the talk, the first week of school, this is one issue we pick with all the crap that goes on in this world. That was perfect, because this is where I feel. And then he went on to Fox and gave it even the controversy even more oxygen. The question is, were you speaking for the chairwoman and the entire board? The edited version of the comments are as follows, but in the minutes of September 8th. The vice chair of the Board of Ed and chair of the curriculum committee addressed a controversial vocabulary list, which he found offensive, and was discouraged that parents did not reach out directly to the board and instead turned to social media, and there was a complaint or problem, so the negative actions of one teacher could be addressed and not negatively affect all the other teachers. Apparently, he did not take his own advice. Since this was nothing but a made-up controversy of vocabulary words in a worksheet, I choose to speak in support of the unknown teacher, as it should be. First, I would ask each of you on the board to read your policy on curriculum. You will find that there is nothing but a hyped-up controversy that went national for cheap political points. Education is the cornerstone of our lives and history. The good, the bad, and the ugly should never be ignored. As I was watching the Ken Burns Holocaust documentary on PBS this week, I could not help but wonder, what if the students brought the subject up in class? Does the teacher say, "I'm sorry, we cannot discuss this. It's not part of the history curriculum"?
Good evening, Board of Education. My name is Evan Carey. My address is 341 Harnish Drive. I won't get into too much specifics with the term of the packet. I feel everyone who has gone so far has detailed quite plainly the situation that is and with the basic views. I will just say that as the author and head organizer of the petition that has been going around Southington High School, which now has 150 signatures, that at least for those students, that we stand by the teachers and stand by what they believe in. I would like to turn the discussion forward to how this impacts students, because I feel that we often leave that conversation out. When I was getting signatures for this position, I talked to a lot of marginalized students, and they informed me how that they felt scared and hurt by these decisions and the message that it was sent out. I think Southington High School serves as kind of a microcosm for the society that Southington is. It's extremely diverse and extremely unequal. We bring in a lot of students from other areas, and unfortunately, they are unable to speak tonight, even though they go to our school. I feel as though that this conversation has shifted away from the students, and teachers, even though that they are the ones who are being directly put in the crossfire of all of this. I also want to point out that these situations are inherently political. You cannot separate politics from any sort of matter of societal life. That's just inherent to how it is. I also feel that as high schoolers, we should be treated with the dignity and respect that young adults deserve. We are not unintelligent. We understand what is going on around us, and I believe we deserve every right to have respectful debate in the classroom. Greek philosophers and Enlightenment thinkers did not get the ideas they did by simply not talking about them. The dialectic was not moved that way. Thank you for your time.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dante Napolitano of 500 Darling Street, and I'm a senior at Southington High School. My goal today is to offer a perspective that is often overlooked in our town by sharing my experiences in the Southington public school system. Throughout my 4 years of taking honors English and AP English courses, I have read a plethora of credible, advanced books that discuss topics of prejudice, gender norms, social justice, and privilege. In other words, topics that are taught across the nation. From learning society's prejudices from the book and How to Kill a Mockingbird, to learning about the perspective of living impoverished in America and nickel and dimed, we discuss these tough yet important topics to better understand the world we live in. When we discuss these topics, it is important to discuss them accurately and respectfully. How can we discuss prejudice without learning what prejudice is? How can we ponder privilege when we deny that it exists? Usually one of few minorities in my classes, I feel isolated when these topics are discussed inaccurately and offensively by my classmates. But can I really blame them for no one is teaching them right from wrong? According to the U.S. Census Bureau, updated as of July 2021, 91.6% of Southington residents are white. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, about 80% of Southington high school students are white. It is no secret that our town lacks diversity, but that is mostly out of our control. How we treat one another and respect those who are different is in our control. Starting in Flanders Elementary School, I have been made fun of for my hair and dehumanized for my skin. In DePaula Middle School, I was called a racial slur for the first time and subject to curious yet ignorant middle schoolers. In high school, my experiences are no different. Witnessing my classmates speak slurs freely without repercussions to being made fun of for my hair just this week. I have not seen progress in the way that we treat one another in 12 years of being in the Southington public school system. To my classmates who feel uncomfortable learning about racism, privilege, and other tough topics, that's the point. We should not feel comfortable learning about other people's struggles or seeing unfair treatment of others. We should be enraged, empathetic, and most importantly, self-aware. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Skylar Princehorn. I live at 37 Windcrest Court, and I'm a senior at Southington High School. As you can tell, I'm one of many students who has been disheartened by the recent situation with a 10th grade English teacher. This was due to the vocabulary list, as we've all discussed. As a student who went through the 10th grade English curriculum, I've seen firsthand the social issues discussed in these books we read. Censoring students from identities and topics discussed socially, as well as in literature, is a threat to both education and the safety of our students. I'm positive that it's not a shocking statistic that 97% of students are actively on social media. And I'm sure that we can all agree that social media perpetuates a lot of biases and misinformation. The students know these vocabulary words. They've seen them, they have opinions on them, and they know people and situations that these words are applicable to. This isn't a first-time exposure. This is only in education. Providing a textbook definition of words students see daily and how to utilize them in a classroom setting is not a deprivation of freedoms. It is the promotion of a safe educational environment. A safe environment that we need when our school climate is one where students continually target each other with discriminatory comments and slurs. One of the words on the list is explicit bias. As defined, explicit bias is a conscious and purposeful bias. This is what we see in the media, partisan issues, social talks, and misinformed conversations. Biases are removed by factual information. The standard factual definitions as provided by teachers are an effort to remove biases and foster safe and purely educational conversations within the classroom. If you expect a safe educational conversations for the students, then our teachers need guidelines and parameters on how to provide an education on the topics that should not be ignored. It was mentioned that the curriculum is devised to prepare students, and I'm curious as to where these definitions of these socially relevant terms would be appropriately taught, if not in an English classroom. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Grace Toro, and my address is 15 Russell Road, Milldale, Connecticut. I just think it's funny how much of an uproar this paper caused. All it took was one offense and 2 students to report it. Something I find strange is that after hearing the N-word 3 times a row in gym class and multiple people reporting this incident, it was never handled. I was one of those who reported it, but always, as always, racism is simply brushed under the rug. How come there wasn't a board meeting to talk about the racist slurs said in the school by our own student body? Multiple other students have told me that they were instructed to say the N-word during class while reading a book because it was simply historical. As soon as there is something that states white privilege, it is immediately taken to the Board of Ed and shut down. Does that not prove white privilege? As a person of color, I find it difficult to believe that the town I live in does not want to grow and educate our youth to be respectful and actually understand what people of color have gone through. The packet in question was a definition sheet that went along with the book called Native Son. It outlined different themes that were presented in the controversial book. The article mentioned white privilege, but also said, and I quote, "No individual is personally responsible for what white people have done or the historical decisions of the American government, but you are responsible for whether you are currently upholding the system that elevate white people over people of color." If Southington schools did not want to talk about race, why do we read books in school that like To Kill a Mockingbird or The Native Son, that is full of content that talks about slavery, discrimination, and white privilege? All this packet was preparing us to do was to have respectful and meaningful conversations. But when the word white privilege was brought up, Southington was blinded by rage and forgot to have respectful conversations themselves. It is clear to see that colored voices aren't as loud as the white ones. If we are going to treat white privilege like a slur, we should treat the real slur, the N-word, like one too. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Denny Perlat. My address is 204 Harness Drive. And originally, I was not going to give a speech today because, frankly, I was a bit scared to speak my mind and just talk about the recent matters that have occurred at SHS, which is the vocab sheet. But I would just like to give a few of my thoughts on this. I believe the harsh and negative impacts that this caused on certain students was due to the certain kind of shelter and closure that some students and some parents put their students through. As you may know, this was instantly spread throughout the media, and it became very relevant to everyone. And you may know that society today is ever changing, and this vocab packet was just an example of this generation. And I believe the monumental speeches that were given today were just an example of the change that is being brought upon at SHS. And I believe a certain result or the reason why this change is happening is due to the influential teachers at our school. I believe every single teacher has some type of impact on these students, which causes them to speak out in a phenomenal way and speak their mind. I believe each student is starting to learn that change is inevitable and should be taken when the opportunity arises. I believe that we should all learn that we cannot just disclose something. We cannot get rid of something as it is there. It is permanent. And we need to learn how to be able to accept obviously controversial topics and learn to grow from them. We cannot just push them aside or act like they aren't relevant, as that just upsets society as a whole, and it just causes more rage and more arguments to arise. And if we keep doing that, there will just be more meetings like this where students have to speak their mind and no change happens.
Good evening. My name is Valerie Ragucci. I live at 102 West Street. First, I'd like to start off by saying thank you to the Southington Board of Education for your quick response pertaining to this 10th grade English teacher that promoted her own personal and political beliefs in a handout to students. With the recent encouragement by a local state university to continue to teach this inappropriate subject matter known as critical race theory, it's clear we need more safeguards put into place to protect our kids from more of it. As a parent, I do not agree with these political theories being taught to my children. Because it is impossible to monitor teachers without cameras or audio in the classrooms, which is actually a great idea to implement, parents need assurance these radical teachings will stop. Children should not be taught they are racist. They should not feel ashamed. They should not be taught to put everyone else first, are superior or inferior, must act as a victim, or are owed something because of the pigment of their skin. Promoting these ideas is not healthy and the very definition of racism. These ideas do not help us grow as a nation, but they divide us further. With that being said, Southington parents, along with the group Families for Freedom, are calling for our school board to lead by example and put new policy into place that will provide transparency for all training materials used for staff and faculty training. This would include all matters pertaining to diversity, equity, inclusion, race, ethnicity, sex, gender, and any other combination of these concepts, giving parents and students reasonable access to review such materials prior to being taught. These materials could be displayed on the school website in an easily accessible location and would also remove the burden placed on our principals, Board of Ed, and other faculty to monitor alone. In conclusion, I want to tell you my children have attended schools in Hartford.
We're showing respect.
There is
please.
only one race, the human
Valerie,
race.
I'm sorry,
That
your
is what
time is
everyone
up.
should be teaching.
My name is Riley Irwin from 32 Vermont Avenue. I'm a 2020 graduate from SHS. And our school board claims that they want to protect the children, but they can't even follow a judge's order in a student's record. According to the student handbook 5125, all the records shall be under the care of a person responsible to see that unauthorized persons do not gain access to them. I started in Southington Public School Districts in second grade up till my senior year, obviously. Every single year, every single quarter or semester, I was brought in to ask where my biological mother was. In my record, there was a court order from the judge that did my parents' divorce. She was not to have any knowledge of my whereabouts, nor any of my information, and the school tried to send it to her. I was in high school. I was called down to the guidance office and told I had to find out where she was. I was supposed to find a woman that I haven't seen since I was 6. Now, I don't know how many other students they've done this to, but quote my words, I will be here at every Southington Board of Ed meeting to protect their children and speak for their children about the corruption that goes on at our high school and to protect the future students of Southington Public School District. Thank you for your time.
Hi, Elizabeth Johnston, 103 Orchard Hill Drive. I want to start by thanking you all. I think what you shared was very helpful and very informative as a parent of students in this system. And these kids have been doing such an amazing job because really, if we can't listen to them, why are we here? But I want to go back to something that was brought up about this being propagated into something entirely different. And I take issue with the fact that the process was the root of the problem, but the process isn't what got the attention. And unfortunately, the crap that was mentioned and where it came from was directly related to a quote from a Board of Ed member who we are all supposed to be on the same team here. We're parents, our students, our educators. Why are we throwing our educators under the bus? Why are we making ourselves in national media a laughing stock? This is not what Southington is about. I know we don't believe this. I know we believe better for our kids. We have to have our educators' backs. They have ours every day. This teacher was talking about words and phrases and things in the real world outside of this room. In this room, clearly, from what we've heard, our teachers need to know that we believe in respectful conversation, that we believe in the fact that safe space communication, that was part of this worksheet. Was that in any of the stories before? Respectful dialogue, putting people first. That was what she was trying to teach. And I don't know the background, and these kids have done such a great job helping us understand the stories, the context that they live in their school. And my kids are younger, they're in elementary and middle school, and they'll be there. And I look forward to them having teachers like that are thoughtful about respectful communication, that everyone in this room has differences. Every single one of us has differences. And if we can't recognize those and figure out how to talk about them respectfully, how are we helping our kids? We have got to leave the political crap outside. It doesn't belong in the classroom.
Susan Sabahansky from Plantsville. I'd like to first thank
Your
the
street
Board of
address, please, Sue.
I don't have to state my address. It's not required by law. They have my address on file. Can I have yield my time back?
Yeah,
please?
yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Hold on. Okay.
The first thing I'd like to say is that many people obviously were not here last week. The Board of Ed definitely handled this in an appropriate manner, and I appreciate that. It was a timely manner. The parents who came here did not come to discuss the topics, and at least from my point of view, it wasn't about the topics. I'd like to read from the curriculum policy. The discussion and study of controversial issues shall be objective, represent a representative of all major points of view held on such issues. And I noticed Mr. Oshana skipped that part. The teacher shall approach controversial issues in the classroom in an impartial and unprejudiced manner, and refrain from using classroom privileges and prestige to promote a partisan point of view. There are many teachers who are doing a great job. We are not here to say that. We're here against teachers who go rogue and teach outside of the curriculum. It doesn't matter what it is, because one day it's going to be a topic that you don't approve of. There is a process, and as Mr. Medancy said, that process, this material that presented was biased. And I'm upset that you just said you're here to support teachers and not parents who bring these issues forward to you, because it's important that we are hearing the parents. Every board of ed member on here, the chairwoman said she was, here for the teachers and the administrators. That's not who elects you. It's the parents and the community members of this town that elect you. This worksheet did present controversial issues. The NAACP themselves has said that CRT, which is the teaching of systemic racism in the American society, is not taught in K through 12 schools because it is not developmentally appropriate to do so. It is used in fields of professional and academic research. When you tell students that this country is systemically racist and that that systemic racism exists, that is a theory. It is not a truth. It is not a fact. Therefore, it needs to be presented in a manner that is unbiased.
Good evening, Katie Wade, 39 Madeline Lane. I'll be brief. We live in Southington, many of us, and we're all here for our own reasons. I'm here because I have 2 children who attend Southington Public Schools, and another one starting next year. Like many people I know in this town, my family likes it here. This is a growing community. Our local builders are putting up new houses all over town, and families move here because the schools are good. Why am I hearing that Southington is a terrible place to live with a broken school system? This is our community. This is not Washington, D.C. Even when we don't agree, we are neighbors. So I was curious to hear different perspectives on this issue. And over the last few days, I've spoken to a lot of parents who also send their kids to our public schools. The majority of the people I spoke to couldn't believe this was an issue, but I did speak to a few who had concerns about this vocabulary sheet. The concerns were mostly about ensuring that they were notified about topics that they would like to discuss with their kids at home. I happen to agree with Mr. Bachesky that the most important teacher in a child's life is their parent. So I think it's great that they want to have these conversations. We talked about the importance of being able to respectfully deal with our differences of opinion. But I think the most important thing that I want to share with this board that I heard from everyone is that they love their teachers. And we have faith that the administration that you have put in place is capable of dealing with any personnel issues. And I've said it here before, but our schools are the heart of our community. And by and large, we know we have great schools with great teachers, and we want to keep them. There are people who have stood by, these are the people who have stood by our kids in these last few difficult years. We're parents, many of us, so we're paying attention. That's our job. But we have trust in our teachers. We literally trust them with our children's lives. And to anyone in here tonight who is here because they truly want what's best for Southington school kids, even if we don't agree, I'm glad you're here. I'd love to talk about things we all want for our schools, maybe channel some of our energy. Open to ideas. Southington is a good community. Thank you for speaking up in support of our team.
Hi, everybody. Sean Irwin. I'm a Southington resident as well, and I will not give my address to anyone. So we're teaching CRT in schools now. When I was here last year talking about it, can anybody explain to me what white privilege is and why it's never been used in a court hearing? Because the courts don't recognize it because it's not provable. There's no such thing. But yet we want to teach our children that this is a real thing, and all white people are bad, and they're all scary. It's absolutely ridiculous. I hear you talking about you're here for the teachers, you're here for this, you're here for that. What about us? We're the ones that put you behind those desks, and we can take you out of them too. I recently did a Freedom of Information Act request about like mileage and things, about you guys getting money back if you go somewhere or something. I was told this doesn't exist. Of course, you guys have it buried under remuneration for school board members. So I'll be doing a Freedom of Information Act about those. And we'll see where your money's going, where our money is going. I'd also like to know how the federal investigation you guys have been under for 2 years is going. Of course, you guys don't answer questions. It's the only board in Connecticut where you can get up and stand up in front of people, and they're not answerable to anybody. I come up here and ask questions. We don't take questions. It's ridiculous. You people on a whole are a joke. Now, there are certain people up here that I like, and I back and I vote for. Other ones, you can go to hell, in my opinion.
How sad.
My name is Tom Catricala. I live at 204 Stonegate Road. Like many here, I was told by friends and family that when I moved to Southington, I got a lot of the same reactions as a lot of other people. But I never heard anything about the Board of Ed. Not until now. Not until last week. I was baffled that something so mild had upset so many people. This was a teacher, in my view, setting standards for classroom discussion. Respect others, sharing is caring, understanding that everyone in life comes from a different background than your own. These radicals are triggered over a 2-page handout because it alludes to the harsh truth that they don't want to acknowledge, that trans people exist, that racism still exists here in Southington. You want to talk white privilege? Look at the board, look at the audience, look at every level of government in Southington. And that school needs to be a safe space for children to express themselves and talk about these issues in Southington. This is supposed to be a nonpartisan board, but like a lot of Southington's government, it's been poisoned by politics, because that's what this is. Dirty, slimy politics. We are 2 months out from the election, and Republicans in this town are using this made-up issue to galvanize voters. Because that is all that matters to them. Politics and power. And I will be honest, I don't know all of you on the board, but from my point of view, it doesn't seem like some of you want good schools in Southington. We're scaring teachers away, either forcing them to retire and disrupting an entire school year with these shenanigans. But the point of all of this is the fear. The fear that every teacher in town feels when stuff like this happens, the fear that they'll lose their job for teaching the truth. But this is not about truth. This is part of an organized effort by Republicans, both nationally and sadly locally now, to destroy public education.
Activity.
There was the political. There was.
Hello, my name is Tyler Young from Berkeley Avenue. I'm here as a parent, not as an elected official and not as a representative of any political party. I would like to also start out by saying that I don't believe it's the majority of teachers pushing these types of agendas. I have a great respect for teachers and the job that they do. However, that does not negate the fact that several teachers are in fact pushing activist agendas outside of the curriculum onto our kids without our knowledge or consent. And the teachers, administrators, and union leaders need to be held accountable for allowing our children to be subjected to these teachings simply by placing teachers on leave paid for by taxpayers is not an acceptable way to handle this. It's unfortunate that when parents like myself speak out against topics like CRT and gender ideology being taught in schools, that we are ridiculed and called racist, homophobic, and extremists, which in turn has silenced many parents. But for the sake of our children, we're done being silent. I am all for my kids learning about different cultures, ethnicities, genders, and religions. However, currently, when these topics are covered in school, they're being done with an undertone of racism, hierarchy, and frankly, demonization of one particular race and gender. And that's what parents like myself have a resistance to. I am not against the teaching of our country's full and true history. However, can it really be an accurate portrayal when it is being rewritten in the way of tearing down statues, changing mascot names, and falsely stating that our country is systemically racist and that anybody who doesn't agree with that theory is accused of being the ones to be intolerant? Critical race theory is just that, a theory. It is not fact, and it needs to stop being presented as such. I do not believe that children need to be constantly reminded of their differences that, let's be honest, most young children don't even recognize until such an emphasis is placed on it. Regardless of the intent of these teachers, our kids are not sent to school to be taught how to be social justice warriors. It is not the teacher's job to mold my child's morals, their gender identity, or their political affiliations. Our town test scores show that kids are not even being taught the basics adequately, so teachers should stick to that and leave character building and moral teachings to the parents.
Just give me a second.
Hi, my name is Regina Coviella, 12 Beecher Street. When it comes to education in this town and across country, it seems that parents are divided. When it comes to the teachings of race, gender, sex, etc., parents are divided. Some parents say they should be the ones to tell their children about these matters. Some are okay with the teachings in the schools. The problem is that some parents don't teach their children these very important things. Unfortunately, discrimination against race, gender, sex, abilities, and more do exist. Some parents are even a part of that discrimination. To say that discrimination doesn't exist is ignorant. When children are using derogatory words towards other children, that is bullying. When our children are upset with being bullied or seeing someone being bullied, there is a problem. When children leave school or are thinking about suicide, there is a very big problem. As far as that, the only need, the basics taught to go into the world after graduating is being dishonest. You need to be able to communicate with all people in numerous situations. You need to be able to stick up for yourself and others. Unfortunately, many adults out there in this world are just plain mean and nasty. So what do we do to help our children achieve out there in the real world with real problems? The teachers need to be able to teach without worrying about being attacked. The parents need to be informed about their children are being taught. We need to stop fighting and come together to find a middle ground and come up with a solution. Maybe a group or a commission of teachers, parents from both sides, and a few board members can be formed. It should not be political or with a majority of one or another, to be fair. They could discuss and set up curriculum that is age appropriate to discuss these matters. Many parents themselves don't understand many of the vocabulary and awareness issues. Submit the rest of this into the minutes. I don't know who I give that to. Down there? Okay.
Any other speakers wish to speak?
Hi, good evening. Thank you. Hi, good evening. Kristen Mangelo, 34 Nutmeg Drive. I stand here today speaking as a lifelong resident of Southington, a product of the Southington High School school system, and as an educator myself in fervent support of the efforts of this Southington High School educator who brought an educational resource to her English classroom for how to engage in conversations that are culturally responsive. According to the Connecticut State Board of Education's position on culturally responsive approach to education under the school district expectations, the Connecticut Board of Education recognizes the need, and this is directly from their statement, providing a safe and effective learning environment to discuss cultural identities such as race, religion, national origins at all grade levels. From what I've been able to gather from the materials of this teacher, this is what they were trying to accomplish by including supplemental materials that provide guidelines for how to engage in these conversations, which is not only valuable in our curriculum, but a necessary part of our curriculum. There is always room in curriculum, especially in the English classroom, for discussions for how to hold conversations about cultural sensitivity with students. There is always room in the classroom for respecting the diverse identities of our students, and this is what this teacher has done in providing this information. The Board of Education's lack of policy on cultural responsive education effectively continues to invalidate and marginalize the identities and experiences of our students of color, of our community members of color. They need to do better. Thank you to the teachers who are doing the work. Thank you, teachers.
Good evening. Rodney Ragucci, 102 West Street. The first question I'd like to ask is, what is happening in our school systems? Not only are our schools becoming divisive, they're creating separation and unneeded stress on our children who are coming off of a pandemic. Why are liberal ideologies allowed to be interjected into our classroom? The Board of Education has a very clear policy that I believe somebody alluded to before, Series 6000, that says a teacher who is in doubt about the appropriateness of discussing certain controversial issues in the classroom or regarding his or her ability to explore such issues will confer with his or her principal. If that teacher did not do that, then they are wrong and they need to be held accountable as such, because that's the way the real world works. When you do something wrong in the real world, you are reprimanded, just like this teacher should be reprimanded. That it has nothing to do at all with being a racist, not caring about somebody's sexual preference. It has nothing to do with that. The idea is that teachers should not be allowed to interject any criteria into our children's classroom without being vetted through the school system. That is the system that is in place. That is the system that keeps our Constitution intact today. Do you realize that it was 159 years ago today that Abraham Lincoln gave his first preliminary emancipation proclamation? On this very day, racism began to turn that day. And the only way it exists today are the people in this room who fight to endorse it. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Christina Sims, and I live at 359 Pattonwood Drive. I am a parent of 3 students in the district, and I've lived in Southington for more than 20 years. Tonight, I'm here in support of the school district, its leadership, its teachers, its students, and most importantly, I want to thank and support the teacher who provided her students an opportunity to learn. The vision of a graduate, as been stated before, for Southington High School states that students will be college or career ready and prepared for life, beyond mastering the knowledge and demonstrating the skills to communicate effectively, think creatively and critically, and contribute to the global community. By providing spaces for students to learn and discuss diversity, equity, and inclusion is supporting the opportunity to think creatively and critically about the world they live in, and prepares them to contribute to the global community that goes far beyond this town line. Thank you for your continued work in this area. It is important, and I hope that it continues.
Hi, my name is Nathan Wright, 1070 Marion Avenue, Plantsville. And I just, I do have something I wanted to say, but first I just wanted to say, like, well, it is true that that the parents, or at least the adults in this community, vote for you. It's really like not us that you serve. It's it's our kids. And I'm here today because of my kids. I've got 3 children, 2 of them in the Southington school system, and I just want to say thanks, because like they're thriving. And when I think about them thriving, I think about the fact that I can remember myself, like probably as a teenager, maybe in college, arguing with my father, having a disagreement, probably political in nature, but there was something where like my values didn't quite align with my father's values. And I remember saying to them in the way that I often did as a youth, I thought the point of having kids was so that we could be better than you. And, my dad didn't like that. And I'm reminded of that myself now, as a father, because I look at my kids, and like the other day, like my son comes home and I say, Nathan, he's got the same name. And I said, Nathan, how was school today? And he said, oh, like Dad, I was in the red. And I was like, what did he do? And he said, I went to the corner, like I did some breathing exercise. I calmed down, and then I jumped back in. And I look at him and I think he is better than me. Like he has learned at a young age this vocabulary to talk about his emotions that allows him to adapt, to recognize where he is and adapt on the fly and self-adjust and to make it, make himself be in a place where he is successful. And that's not, I would love to take credit, as a parent for that, but that is the work that like our teachers do in our social emotional learning. I can't believe that was my beginning.
Hello, my name is Shauna Cole, and I live at 10 North Summit Street. I am the mother of 3 children in the system. I am going to quote the mission as well as other people did. The mission of the Southington Public Schools is to have students engage in a range of educational experience to become informed, adaptive problem solvers who efficiently and effectively communicate, rise to challenges, and are committed to improve themselves and their communities. As I said, my kids are in the Southington school systems. It's a great system. I have a kid in DePaulo and 2 at the high school, one of which was in the class that got this handout that we are up in arms about, this vocabulary worksheet. And this worksheet, we have heard tonight, it's been called many things by some, and yet it remains simply a vocabulary worksheet. It's been called critical race theory, which it is not, because critical race theory is defined as a group of concepts used for examining the relationship between race and the laws and legal institutions of a country, especially of the United States. The vocabulary list has been called pro-diversity, which it is. However, it does not promote one viewpoint over another. It is giving our students the ability to hear, respect, and respond respectfully to each other. To students who hold different values, come from different backgrounds, and interpret the same events and the same groups from a different viewpoint. Our teachers, this specific teacher, is trying to teach our kids about cultural humility, which, if you read the packet, means that that is the ability to maintain a commitment to respecting the value in personal beliefs of others.
Richard Cooper, Plantsville. I think you all know where I live. I think the students that spoke tonight did a really good job, and I hope that you heard them. I just want to say, and people can think whatever they want, but I just want all of you board members to be aware that you can say Black Lives Matter, full stop, and it means what it means. And it wouldn't hurt to hear some of you say that, maybe. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Julia Catracalla. I live at 204 Stonegate Road in Southington. I'm also a social studies teacher in my 5th year of teaching. Yes, most of my career has been during the pandemic. It's been a trip. I'm going to read into the record part of the responsibilities of teachers to students as set by the Connecticut Code of Professional Responsibility for Teachers. Recognize, respect, and uphold the dignity and worth of students as individual human beings, and therefore deal justly and considerately with students. Engage students in the pursuit of truth, knowledge, and wisdom, and provide access to all points of view without deliberate distortion of subject matter. Nurture in students lifelong respect and compassion for themselves and other humans, human beings regardless of race, ethnic origin, gender, social class, disability, religion, or sexual orientation. Guide students to acquire the requisite skills and understanding for participatory citizenship and to realize their obligation to be worthy and contributing members of society. Assist students in the formulation of value systems and worthy positive goals. Promote the right and freedom of students to learn, explore ideas, develop learning skills, and acquire the necessary knowledge to achieve their full potential. Strive to develop within students fundamental critical thinking skills and problem-solving techniques. I believe Southington teachers did, and will always do this. It is my hope as a member of this community that when I send my future children to Southington schools, I can be confident that the Board of Education supports critical thinking. I am so proud to live in this town and so excited to raise my family here. And I am so, so, so proud of the students that had their voices heard tonight. It is so wonderful. And the teachers that are here tonight, be so proud. And I'm so proud that you are going to teach my future children. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
My name is Kristen Keska. I'm from Plantsville. I'm a parent, a teacher, and a public education supporter. I grew up in a split home. My dad was and still is my coach, teacher, mentor, role model, and a vocal conservative. And my mother was the soft-spoken liberal role model for supporting female equality and gay rights at a time when schools and society considered being gay a crime and a disease.
Both were blue collar Americans. The blend of two parents produced three highly educated, critical thinking daughters who are not so quick to put down topics just because it doesn't follow a certain viewpoint or political perspective. That is why this teacher still supports the old conservative topic of a balanced budget amendment for the federal government. I believe that the classroom is the last place in America where civil discourse, respectful conversations where the intent is not to have winners or losers, but to learn, still happens because you have well-trained, personally dedicated educators to teaching of all students, high school students who hear their parents debating at home, easily turn on Fox, NPR, CNN, BBC, and all types of press, liberal and conservatives. Us teachers are not indoctrinating our students. If so, I would indoctrinate on-time completion of homework, spending more quality time, and using primary resources for thesis and reading more world news instead of the next TikTok video. These are the same students that will need these 21st century skills to become amazing doctors, police officers, lawyers, public defenders, social workers, psychologists, scientists, teachers, and of course, Board of Education members, which they can do at the age of 18. I can personally attest that we teachers, who are most of have been or are parents, value conversations that we have with our children when they come home from school. Teachers are not trying to remove your parental liberties to teach your children in your home. This and other lesson activities, this lesson could and should have sparked an in-depth conversation between grown-ups and their children, helping to continue civil discourse that makes our history and invokes history. But instead of doing our proper job as a parent, discussing the issue with our older children, the town has dragged this into a national spotlight, not only at the expense of Southington students, but also the Southington teachers. Thank you, teachers, for all that you do.
My name is Ella Perillo, and I am a sophomore at Southington High School. I want to apologize for running late as I just wrote this, but thought it was important to come. Free speech is a right, and I agree with that. Controversial topics such as politics, race, and the LGBT community are a form of free speech and are allowed to be talked upon. But when these topics fall upon the hands of a teacher to be taught to a student, there will be controversy, like it or not. Treating people equally does not single out genders, races, or any form of human injustice. As a person standing against this, I shouldn't have to feel like I have no one on my side. There are so many kids and parents who disagree on this topic, but yet don't speak out because of a constant judgment being put in our face. An opinion is a feeling, not a right. Opinions are not supported by facts. I'm going to say it now. Racism does not come from one race. Both sides can easily take apart. As I said in the last meeting, we are one race, the human race. Stop picking out one race or the other part, singling out our differences. If a student wants to talk on a topic they're struggling with, so be it. But the teacher should not have that impact in one's life. Preparing a young adult for the world does not include sectioning someone off or teaching them certain things. It includes kindness, love, and the ability to have strength in your belief. This is not a part of the curriculum, learning valuable life skills. That will get us a substantial job, not being taught such agendas. There is no reason for this. Thank you for your time.
My name is Esther Cano Davis. I'm a Southington resident, and my wonderful husband is here with me because we are a unit, and what we are communicating and what we want our children to hear is they have the right to speak. So I'm fortunate to have 4 awesome kids in the Southington school, and they're in middle school, elementary school, high school. And the teachers that they've had are absolutely wonderful. They reach out, they let us know from the smallest things of little boo-boos to the biggest things of, oh, your kids are being bullied, whatever it may be. They're there, they're their support. We all trust when we send our kids to school that they are doing what's best for them, in the best interests of them. The administrators are doing what's in the best interest of them. And if we didn't, we would homeschool. Let's be real. Many of you would just homeschool your kids and create little mini yous, but you want them exposed to the world. You want them out there to learn more than you, and as you said perfectly, to be better than you. If we had brought this topic, or if this topic was shared in advance, or that sheet was shared in advance, as many of you say is the only issue here, guess what? We'll still be here talking about this because that's what's uncomfortable. That's what's uncomfortable. And we need to learn to be uncomfortable. Because all the history that we're teaching our kids was because people were comfortable. And if we're going to teach our kids not to be like history and not to repeat history, they need to start knowing that they could speak and they could be their authentic self when they go into school, regardless of anything. No one needs to take blame. Just listen. Don't come with like a defense mechanism. Just listen, talk, have dialogue. They are going to be working with others in this world. It's not going to be just reading, writing, and arithmetic when you go into the work. It's how you navigate discussing issues with others. So let's not sugarcoat this and make it seem like it's just because this wasn't shared in advance, because we know that's not the case.
Are there any more speakers from the public? I think we'll take a 5-minute recess and we'll get back to the rest of our agenda. Thank you all. Huh?
Colleen, I have to ask you something. Do you have to be a resident to speak? Because I know for a fact that there was one person for sure.
just want to say, regardless of position or stance, I think everybody in this room should be proud of every one of those kids that got up and spoke. I can't believe
Absolutely.
what they came out with. To have the guts to stand up in front of somebody and speak your mind, whatever position you're taking, every one of those kids should be proud of themselves, and their families should be proud of what they created.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're a pretty intimidating guy to talk in front of, you know?
And I also want to say, if anyone complains, especially a certain person here, about how cold or hot it is in here,
Just ignore her.
you will be asked to leave.
Yeah, not about the hot or cold atmosphere we're in here, Mrs. Carmody. Bring a fur coat the next time. Just saying.
Are you talking to me, Mrs. Clark?
Yes, I am. Yes.
I was eating my Cracker Jacks.
No, this is a different RFP.
We have the finance.
We can do it in this order. That's
Yeah.
fine. It's fine. It's fine as it is. All right, committee report. We're going to go to finance committee meeting of September 19th. Mr.
Yep.
Sharnowski.
Thank you. So the Board of Education Finance Committee met earlier this week. We discussed 2 items on our agenda. The first item that I'm going to talk about is the boiler repair at Hatton and Thalberg Elementary Schools. Mr. Romano mentioned that both boilers are leaking and is requesting the use of non-lapsing funds to address both leaking boilers. The request is in the amount of $28,200 using the fiscal year 2021 non-lapsing funds to repair the leaking boilers. The administration will use the state of Connecticut contracts to 19 PSX 002 to award the work to Air Temp Mechanical Services Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $14,100 at Hatton and $14,100 at Thalberg. The administration recommends that the award as noted above and recommends the award as noted above and requests the use of the non-lapsing funds to be approved for this project. So I do have a motion on that. And the motion is the move to approve the fiscal year 2021 non-lapsing funds to repair the boilers at Hatton and Thalberg Elementary Schools in the amount of $28,200.
Second.
Say.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. One more. Or do you want to talk about it now and then?
No, well, that's the new business, so we'll talk about that in the new business. Okay.
Yep.
Any questions for Mr. Sharnowski? Yep, thank you, sir. Old business, town government communications.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. Unanimously.
Town government communications, I don't have any. Do you? Anybody? No? Committees? Other than your now soon to be called the fiber committee? I don't know. Fiber. I don't know.
No, they're going to let us know.
Okay. New business, the RFP 2023-01 engineering services for facility study. Would you like Mrs. Who's gonna?
I could do it. Fine.
Meanie.
So this was also part of the finance committee that we had discussed earlier this week. The item that we discussed was the engineering services for the facility study, RFP 2023-01. It was going to be for the facility studies at 5 of our schools, which include Hatton, Oshana, South End, Strong, and Thalberg. Part of the scope of work would include evaluating the existing conditions surrounding all of the HVAC systems in all 5 schools in relation to things like indoor quality and assess all the electrical systems will work for all the recommended recommendations, right? They also will provide the recommendations for the implementation of air conditioning, ventilation, and dehumidification, as well as providing rough cost estimates for all of those. The rough cost estimates are expected to be proposed in the Town of Southington's capital plan, which will be presented in November of 2022. The lowest RFP that we received was from Consulting Engineering Services of Connecticut with a base price of $33,500. At this time, the recommendation of the administration is to award RFP 2023-01 to Consulting Engineering Services of Middletown at that base price of $33,500. And again, funding for this project will also come from the fiscal year of 2021 non-lapsing account. And I do also have a motion for that one as well. Move to award engineering services for facility study at Hatton, Oshana, South End, Strong, and Thalberg Elementary Schools to consulting engineering services in the amount of $33,500 as presented.
Second.
Can I just ask did you want to ask a question?
Not necessarily a question. I just wanted to let the board know that Zaya, Mr. Oshana and I participated with with a group to kind of go through the bids. There was a big discrepancy between the
That's what I was
top
going to ask
bids,
about.
upwards of anywhere from $100,000 to $70,000 more.
Oh.
And we were a little suspect, but they were checked out, and everybody feels quite comfortable, and they're going to live up with that number. So I think we're in good shape.
To the point that we actually had them come back and we had a meeting with them in person, or it was actually virtual, but they so great opportunity for the district.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, was there any explanation of why
They said that
other places were
this
so-
was their quote, and their quote would allow them to do everything that we asked them to do.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's impressive. Nice.
Well, thank you.
And on time. And on time.
Good on vetting that.
Yep.
I was also going to add that they're in the process of wrapping up a few other jobs, so the timing of our RFP fit perfectly into an opening that they had, so they felt willing to take it on at that cost.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Janowski and Mr. Oshana, for putting in the extra effort with this. All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Next item on the agenda, special education audit report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If you recall, last year during a meeting, Mr. Medanti initiated the conversation around engaging in a special education audit. We wanted to make sure we had an outside set of eyes that could take a look at our processes. And we contracted with CERC, and Dr. Dana Corvo is here with us this evening. Oh, sorry, with CREC.
We're all
Dr.
friends, so.
Yeah, yes. And she's going to run through the results of the audit with you, and then we'll answer any questions. Dr. Corvo?
Great, thank you. Thank you, Board of Education. I'm happy to be here tonight to give you some of the findings from our special education program review that was conducted through spring here in Southington Public Schools. It was accompanied with a report, and so the administration has the report and has been able to review it and ask questions. So I'm going to provide some of the highlights from the report tonight. I'll entertain questions as they are allowable at a board meeting, and I'm always available to administration should there be any follow-up need. Okay. So I'm just going to. Mixed methods review. So we had a combination of both qualitative and quantitative data collection, observations, surveys, focus groups. We looked at a variety of data sources. Those were, some of them were vetted by the State Department of Education as official public data. Other were internal documents and internal pieces of information that we reviewed while we were on site. There were 4 research questions that we formulated along with Southington Public Schools administration. The 4 areas that they focused on were resources, organizational structures and processes, student learning, communication, and collaboration. So the visit was in fact designed around those 4 primary questions. One of the first things we did was get into the quantitative data and money. Unfortunate reality for public schools. Budget is always a driver of certain things. And so in this slide, I apologize if it's not easily readable. I tried to take up as much space as I could without confusing too much of the information. but we did select 3 comparison districts. Demographically, they are similar across a number of variables, and this was in agreement with Southington administration. And then we also pulled the State Department of Education numbers for statewide comparison. So you can see over 3 years, the data available were only through 2019-20. The expenditures in each school district, and then you can see the enrollment for each school district. Notably, Southington maintains the highest enrollments of the comparison districts. And also notably, Southington has the lowest per pupil expenditure of the comparison districts, as well as the State Department of Education. Of the entire Southington Board of Education budget, we were able to look at how much of that is shared with special education. So as a percent of the total budget, you can see those same comparison districts along with the state, and what proportion of your budget is dedicated to special education. So in this particular data set, you can see that Southington has the largest proportion of its money for special education as compared to the 3 comparison districts and the State Department of Education. Another data point just to help us continue putting things into perspective is expenditures. And there's a lot of data on expenditures. I'm sure Mrs. Millett can expand upon them at any other time in detail, as you have budget season coming up and you'll be getting into those numbers. But we did pull some notable pieces here. So you can see, again, the 3 comparison districts and the state. You can see the actual dollar amount, and then you can see the percent of the total, which is what is really relevant when you're putting it into context. So in the 3 comparison districts and in the state, you'll notice in the instructional aids line, across the comparison districts and the state, on the percent of the total, Southington does maintain the highest rate of its salaries for instructional aides as compared to those other data points. In comparison to out-of-district tuition, so this is for students with disabilities, where Southington pays a tuition to schools outside of its public schools so they can receive an appropriate education. You'll see again Southington as compared to 3 comparison districts and the state, and again it's the percent of the total that puts things into perspective. You'll see Southington is at a lower rate than the comparison districts and the state in this aspect. So one conclusion that could be drawn is that the dollars for Southington have largely remained in Southington, particularly even for students that might have some significant disabilities that need to be addressed elsewhere if you were in a different district. Staffing is also another part of the context. And so as I get into more of the data, it's interesting. You always have to consider weighing these types of variables. Is more staffing equal to certain impacts on your budget, certain outcome students, certain things that are going to happen in your building? So I'm going to run through some of the staffing data, and if you have questions later, we can go through them or I can come back. But in terms of the student population, the interesting thing was that Southington only decreased its student population by 110 students over 3 years. That is not a lot of students at all. That's barely natural attrition. I'm not sure what your high school graduating class is, but I'm pretty sure that's a really low number. The comparison districts experienced an average of 200 to 350 students decreased enrollment over that same time period. And you may be familiar with trends in education in Connecticut with decreased enrollments overall, but for a district to only experience 110 students is really remarkable. But with that,
some changes had occurred over time in terms of central office administration became leaner, especially when you look at the comparison to some of the other comparison districts whose central office administration increased. And you have to consider what the ripple effect of that is. At the school level, you'll see Southington has very healthy administrative positions. And to me, that's an attestation of the commitment at the school level for students to have the resources. But it does beg a question of what was the ripple effect of losing those administrative positions, because work certainly didn't decrease. So I'm going to move into some of the more qualitative components, which were the surveys, had some open-ended text, and then focus groups. So we were able to get into many of the schools, and we did classroom observations, and then we also spoke to managers, administrators, paraprofessionals, related service staff. Most staff reported that administrators and colleagues were accessible whenever there were questions and problems, and people did respond, even if they didn't have an answer or they didn't have the best answer. So staff were very vocal to say, I've never really felt left behind or in the dark, or that no one was addressing whatever my question was, even if we didn't have the answer. So that's really good. But there were some indications, and some staff did note that there was a desire for building administration to be more visible amongst the special education programming, students, teachers, classrooms, etc. Now, again, going back to the concept that central office administration decreased, the work did not decrease, you still maintain a very healthy student enrollment, it begs the question of what is the impact on building administrators to be able to address some of the things that some of the teachers would like to see. Staffing in terms of teachers. So we have teachers and instructors, paraprofessionals in the top half there, general education, and then teachers and instructors, paraprofessionals in the bottom half. So again, the same three comparison districts. And so Southington is leaner administratively, but it was able to increase staffing with students. And so again, it questions, what does that mean for administrators, and are they actually able to be more visible when you have these other variables happening kind of around that? Another thing we looked at was the caseload versus out. So special education teachers maintain what is called a caseload, and by and large, it's the list of students. And some teachers may have 3, some teachers may have 30. It's a moving target depending on school, district, programming, etc. The hours is a different analysis, though. The hours were actually pulled from all of the IEPs and collapsed into hours of service per staff member as compared to students with disabilities per staff member. So you can see the ratios over time in terms of students per staff member maintain relatively stable. And then the hours of service per staff member increased. Now, you might think a 27.6 hours per staff member up to a 29.2 hours per staff member isn't significant. But I believe you have a roughly 35-hour work week. And if you back out duties, prep time, lunchtime, arrival, disruptions, etc., every minute counts. And so that's a consideration to be looking at when, again, you're weighing some of these variables about what's going to be important for Southington for its students with disabilities. Another piece of our review was IEP development. So as you may know, individualized education programs, plans drive the education for students with disabilities. And there is a rubric that has been vetted, and there's a scoring mechanism by which we can score 4 areas and get an overall indicator. Up here is just the scoring matrix, and you can see to the right, Southington's column scored 3s and 4s, which placed them in the emerging practices. So not at the unacceptable, not quite at progressing, and not at promising practice quite yet, okay? Southington's emerging practices means there's work to be done, but there's also some good stuff going on that probably should be looked at in terms of scaling up and understanding what's going on that really pushed us over into the emerging area. Some of the feedback was about roles and responsibilities in terms of general education staff not being entirely clear about paraprofessional roles and responsibilities over the last few years, certainly with the onset of COVID disrupting many things. There doesn't seem to be confidence in the clarity of paraprofessionals either working with an individual student, are they for a group of students, are they for my class, and what can I expect of that paraprofessional? Do they have the skill set? Do I tell them what to do? Do they understand my curriculum so they can help? Paraprofessionals were also not entirely clear about their roles and responsibilities. And so there was some inconsistency in the use of paraprofessionals, whether they were a general classroom para or even specifically assigned to a student. So you do have paraprofessionals of both types. And it just didn't seem clear to a lot of them, which caused hesitation. And in my own experience, I've seen this many times where a paraprofessional does not want to step on the teacher's toes, doesn't want to make a mistake, doesn't want to misdirect the students. So they may hold back when in fact the teacher would love for that paraprofessional to get engaged and take some risks with my students to, try this thing out with them. So that is a little bit of a gray area for the staff. But you do have promising practices. You have really strong pockets of IEP development, and it's aligned with instruction and expectations and the efficient use of staff. Now, the state has rolled out a new IEP, which has basically turned special education in all 168 districts upside down. But I will tell you, I believe the practices here in Southington, you have things that you can grow on no matter which way that turns, upside down, sideways, or inside out. I know that you're working with CERC for some early stages of that development, and if you stay the course, I feel very confident that you're going to see some significant outcomes over time. Everybody they're ready, they are eager, and they have a growth mindset. Despite coming out of years of disruption from COVID, I have to tell you, every single person I spoke to wanted to know, what can I do? How can I do this better? How can I help someone? What can I do? So that is prime opportunity for growth and development now. Training for effective paraprofessional supports in classrooms can go a long way. You have a lot of human capital for resources. You can be very effective at using them and probably see even more outcomes for your students across the board. And so having the training for the paraprofessionals, but also for general education teachers and staff to know that these are the expectations versus these are not the expectations, because they will change. Also with administrators, so that administrators are aware of where they're able to either support, maybe hold accountable, not in a bad way, but just to check in and make sure people are in fact doing what they're expected to do. And so the last bullet there is about, again, doing the practices. You have some IEP quality training going on in the district with the new IEP in the state. If as many people as possible, general education included, got that training, I think you would find the conversations to be more meaningful amongst all staff. I think you would find much more well-informed teachers and even perhaps students, specifically at your middle and high school levels. And your administrators might feel more confident in understanding where their role is to make sure they're leveraging all of this. The IEP development and implementation with CERC, I believe, is underway. And again, staying the course on that is going to be critically important because the state's training is not going to be the answer to everything. It is very technical. It is this is where you check the box, this is where you dot the I, and this is where you cross the T. And that's fine. There's a purpose for that. But the CERC training will dive deeper. And from what I understand about Southington Public Schools is you go beyond checking the box. So I think that's something that's going to be really critical for you. Another interesting we discovered is the behavior consult team, which is new this year. And interestingly, the State Department of Education, well, the legislature actually passed legislation about behavior crisis teams in schools. Now, a lot of schools and districts have not really paid attention, or they've not paid attention very well to that legislation. What I can't tell you is how the behavior consult team was initiated. I believe Mr. Medancy had some knowledge that something had to happen here. And so having that in place in combination with the legislation, which I think was just a serendipitous timing. I don't think there was any intention there with
I have no inside sources.
Yeah, like was really just very intuitive. And I think that will be critical in the times to come, as you're aware of a lot of disruption going on in students' lives, but also as adults, and making sure that adults have, the semblance of a consult team that they can go to for the struggles that they might be seeing in their classrooms and in their schools. So that was the nutshell version, because the report is roughly 50 pages, and I can't imagine you'd want to sit through that.
Love pages.
But again, I'm happy to entertain questions to the extent that they're allowable at the board meeting, or I can also arrange time for follow-up at the administration's discretion.
Do I have a question?
On a second, Joe, you want to?
So I guess so. One of the biggest questions, I guess, right? Every time we have budget season and everything else, again, because this is such a big nutshell of what we do in Southington. How do we sort of, and again, I know the numbers and everything else, but I mean, you see a lot more districts than say we do, just in one district.
Sure.
How do you see us as far as I guess it seems like the staffing is very, very positive.
Sure.
The actual dollar for dollar that we expend through our budget, it seems, again, pretty good for the quality of what we're getting, as well as the potential for growth as well. So with that being said, do you ever, I guess it would be more hypothetical, but like say we had to outplace, like some districts may have to, do you ever run the model with, okay, if you were outplacing, say, 25% students without these programs, this is actually how much you would be expending? Just, again, it's more to, as an effort to sort of market all of the good work that we do here. It's sort of, again, like we run a lean ship, but we have great people that do the work.
Sure.
So
it sounds like you had a few questions in there.
I guess more importantly, like, can you model what it would be, say, if 25% of our students were outplaced, and again, like actually showing the dollar-wise savings of keeping things in district?
I certainly can do that as a data analysis, but just to give you some perspective.
Yeah.
Tuitions in some of these out-of-district placements, and I'm not talking the residential ones, just the ones that you would transport students to.
Right.
Could range anywhere from, and Rebecca and Jennifer can probably verify this, I would say 50,000 on the low end, and you're probably looking upwards of $200,000 for some really extreme tuitions.
Yep.
And in some situations that may also have other services packaged into it, because some students have very complex needs.
Right.
So, multiply those numbers by how many ever students, and you're going to start to see the growth in that dollar amount. I did not do an analysis, and I don't even think it's available technically, of how many students fall in which of those tuition ranges, but
okay.
That's probably a conversation you can have internally.
Okay. This is great. Thank you.
Mrs. Carmody?
Yes, I have a question. I forgot which slide it was. That paraprofessionals did not know, or the teachers did not know exactly
Sorry, going in the wrong way. Hold on one moment.
Was doing, or what they were
Here we go.
supposed to, what their role was.
Wait, let me see where.
We're getting there.
Yeah.
Here we go.
There it is.
Yeah.
All right. Not entirely clear about their roles and responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean about inconsistency in use of paraprofessionals? What that bothers me.
Sure. I don't know that it's bothersome. It's a notable takeaway from, in some classrooms, there were paraprofessionals that service all 20 students in the room.
Right.
And so they were considered like a general ed para.
Right.
And they sometimes operate in the role more of support to the teacher, right? So the teacher needed an assistant, if you will. And so that was more of the relationship versus sometimes there were paraprofessionals who were only working with certain students in the classroom and not the entire classroom.
Okay.
The inconsistency in the gray area appeared to be from feedback in the focus groups on both general education teachers and paraprofessionals. We're not quite sure where that line is all the time. And so, a lot of time people in education just want to be helpful, right? Paraprofessionals, teachers, everyone they want to help. But there's sometimes a line of, am I being too helpful? Am I not helping in the right way? And there might be hesitation on teachers to understand what the paraprofessional either can do or was assigned to do. So it could be communication, has to be established, roles, responsibilities, expectations, will do, won't do's. But it also could be training that I have another adult in the room, and how can I use this adult, especially when you're looking at things like early reading. Think of those kindergartners, those first graders that have a lot of energy. And that teacher's got to get to every single one of them and get them to learn all those sounds. Can another set of hands in the room, skilled, help with that? That's just an example. And so drawing some of those clarifications could be helpful to make it more efficient.
All right, so, because I was always under the impression that the paraprofessionals, excuse me, were assigned, they had specific assignments. Looking at the numbers that Southington has, first of all, we need more special ed teachers, correct? Yes, I think yes. I'm saying yes.
Okay.
And we also need more special ed paraprofessionals. Our numbers have grown tremendously. So, I mean, I don't know if that's something that you can conclude in your report, but looking at the numbers that you put out there,
yeah,
it's the first thing that strikes me.
Yeah.
And I know how expensive it is. I understand that. But as a former teacher, I know the value of having a paraprofessional in the classroom when we had the special ed students. It's unbelievable how we need them.
Sure.
But I look at the numbers of how our enrollment has increased in special ed, there's no question that Southington needs to be spending more money. And that more money means more staff, both special ed teachers and paraprofessionals, as far as I'm concerned.
Sure. I think one consideration in light of what you're talking about is also something that you had just mentioned in terms of, districts have to consider if we don't provide in the district, we're going to have to provide outside the district.
I understand.
And so where are those dollars most, appropriate? And I don't want to underestimate or not highlight enough the fact that there probably are some students in every school district that the public school district just can't educate because they're so complex. So I'm not, persuading a certain model, but it is a consideration for most districts. If we don't do it in-house, it's going to go out of house, and then we've got to pay for that.
But we've done a wonderful job keeping our special ed kids in-house. And we've saved a ton of money doing that in the last, I would say, 5 or 6 years.
Right.
But there's no question looking at this and reading the whole report that we do need larger special ed teaching staff and paraprofessionals, and all from K-12. Would you agree with that? Or you don't want to make a commitment to that, but.
So I wasn't actually brought in for an opinion, but I do think looking at the staffing, again, in the context of general education. So the other thing I would encourage you to look at is not just the numbers in staffing, but what do our general educators, our special educators, our administrators, and our paraprofessionals, what are they actually equipped to do? And so building capacity adding more people doesn't always solve the problem.
I understand.
So again, it may be an internal discussion, particularly with Rebecca, who knows either the training or the capacity that the district has had, is, where do we make the investment? Do we make the investment in building capacity and building a skill set? Do we make an investment in adding numbers? Do we make an investment in balancing both?
They do a wonderful job. Please don't misunderstand.
Oh, absolutely.
They do a wonderful job in Southington.
Yeah.
But our special ed population, student-wise, has grown tremendously, whereas our staff and administrative role has not, and paraprofessionals. That's what bothers me. That's all I have to say.
Mr. Pepe wants to add something to this.
So just to it can be frightening when you enter into an audit because you don't know what is going to be exposed, right? And so one of my initial conversations with Dr. Corvo, after all the information was gathered and analyzed, was she said, this is not the typical result, right? We're going to look at Southington as going, the accommodations and recommendations going good to great. So we're doing an excellent job with what we have. One of the reasons we engaged in the audit was because the special education represents a large proportion of our overall budget. And we want to make sure that the personnel that we do have, the human capital that we have, is being used effectively so that the kids get exactly what they need. When we took a look at the information in terms of hours of service and what is required, that is increasing. Our kids, based on those numbers, need more. Our paraeducator population or employment, we have a healthy amount, but when you consider the comments that Mrs. Carmody, you highlighted, we want to make sure that there's a clear understanding from the paraeducator what their role is within the classroom, and when a regular education teacher has a paraeducator in their classroom, that they know what the paraeducator can do as well. Again, so that the kids are getting exactly what they need.
Well, thank you I for answering that. I just,
Sure.
something that kind of bothered me with reading. But thank you.
Sure. Mr. Carson and Mr. Darrenowski. Sure.
Okay, so I value your input and thank you, Mr. Pepe. I'd like to push one step further and based on the data and the in-classroom observations in conducting, this audit, this review, what is our district's one priority need to improve the outcomes for our students? That's sort of my hyper focus. So if there's coming out of looking at the data, looking at the numbers, right? You were in the classrooms observing. What is our district's one priority need to improve the outcomes for our students? And obviously, having an conversation between the board and the administration will go a long way in parsing out that need and that conversation. But from your standpoint, what's our one priority need to improve student outcome?
Alignment. There is, without alignment, you're just going to keep adding numbers, not seeing the outcomes that you want. And so alignment with curriculum, alignment with instruction, alignment with interventions, alignment with data collection, and alignment with assessments. If a district can put a thread woven through those things, they're onto something for students with disabilities and frankly for all students.
Okay. Thank you.
Mrs. Clark, can I make one comment?
Sure.
One of the things that I this does capture, but I don't know that it highlights, but I think it's important to recognize and acknowledge is that this board has made a commitment, if you know, over the years that we've brought several programs in district, not only for financial benefit, but we also thought it was best for our students, and gave them an experience that we wanted them to have. With that said, there were some increases in staffing that came with that, right? And so you see that, but you also see the amount of tuition dollars that were saved as a result of that, which I think is a benefit to the town and ultimately to the entire school district for other expenditures. So the increase in staffing isn't necessarily because people are just going crazy hiring. It was directly related to multi-tiered systems of support and programs that the district has made a commitment to and built over time. And so that's one area I think is worth acknowledging in terms of the work of the board with the budget and the commitment we've made to our in-district programs that, I think we even agreed was a strength of the district.
Absolutely. And just to go back to your question, Mr. Carson, specific to Southington, because I feel like I answered that kind of generally, you have all of those things here in Southington. They are firmly planted and they're being cared for. But the time and the investment has to stay steady. Certainly a pandemic doesn't help. Certainly disruptions to schooling, on a day-to-day basis doesn't help. And so those things are really hard to see in the immediate time period. You're looking at an investment of time on top of that alignment. But you have those seeds firmly planted here. I saw it myself.
One other area that will improve our alignment is we had a practice, if you remember, for a long time of 19.5-hour paras and 25-hour paras and 27.5 hours and 31, and created a large amount of turnover.
Right.
Which still continues to a degree right now, not so much because of the hour FTE allocation. It's more about the labor, competition right now that's out there. So it is the alignment, you provide professional development to paras and then you're onboarding new paras and it's a continuous cycle. And so that is an area that we focus on with our onboarding of paraeducators. So, because many of these people don't have educational training backgrounds. So they walk into a classroom and they do have to grow into understanding what their role is. It's not because of any other reason than that cycle that we've done a nice job with. I also think through negotiations with those bargaining units and through our budgets, trying to eliminate a lot of those part-time positions that really left us fragmented and led to a high amount of staff turnover. So that's been an area that I've seen improve tremendously, even in since my time at Kennedy, especially, but more so since our time in central office, that we've reduced a lot of that turnover, which I think should help with the alignment.
I would just like to say I have to apologize because I did read.
Okay.
I try to read all 50 pages. However, this week has been a little bit much, as you can imagine. So I didn't do it the justice, but I'm very glad that, because I don't remember, and Mr. Darrenowski and Mrs. Carmody, did we ever do an audit before?
No, not that one. Yes, we did do one discussion, maybe about, trying to think who was super.
Not like this. Not like this.
Not as
Nothing like
inclusive
this.
as this is, okay?
Yeah.
But we did do a discussion of numbers, staff and so forth. I mean, I did read a lot of this because I have an interest in special ed. And I know the one job that is going on in our schools, but this is really probably the most inclusive audit that we've had. We're looking good. We're doing an excellent job. We should be very proud of what's going on in our schools and special ed. It's just, it's a hard job and and it costs a lot of money. And we just have to be aware.
Mr. Darrenowski, I'm sorry, I stepped on your, I know you had a
Forget about
question
me
or
down here.
comment. No, that was me. I jumped in. I shouldn't have done, I had you. I said Mr. Carson and then Mr. Darrenowski. Sir.
Very impressive. I mean, it's a lot of numbers, and I'll be the first to admit that a lot of these numbers are somewhat Greek to me. I'm not a special ed person, but I do have a concern and maybe a quick question that I'm not sure if you can answer it. I know our administration probably can't. Are special ed students being serviced?
That's a great question. Yes.
And are they being serviced to an extent that not only the administration, but the staff, but the parents are happy with.
So I'll address the parent piece first because that's actually really easy. We had a very large number of parents respond to the survey, one of the highest we've seen in all of our program reviews. And by and large, they're satisfied. They're satisfied, if not happy, and proud. There were some outliers in there, certainly, and we did not track identifiable data, so I don't know who they are. But we did share with the administration to the extent that we could that you have some parents that, you know, might be knocking on your door.
Okay.
So the parents are not, you know, dissatisfied in terms of special education. The other part of your question, are they being serviced? Well, there's two parts to that question. The technical part is if a student has 10 hours of special ed services on their IEP, are they getting those 10 hours? The answer is yes. You are in compliance. I would be shocked that I can't even imagine that you would have any issues with compliance with an IEP. The second part of that question, though, is are their services giving us good outcomes? Because it's one thing to get the services, but how are the students doing with those services? And that's a difficult question to answer because when it comes to students with disabilities, it's not just about their reading and writing. It's about communication, it's about their motor skills, their self-help skills, employment, and all that. By and large, you know, we did not do an analysis of outcomes that were not reading, writing, and math because they're so individualized. Your reading and writing and math, however, there's a gap. There's a relatively large gap between the students without disabilities and the students with disabilities. Now, one could argue, well, that gap is, you know, on some level natural because, you know, they do, you know, require specialized instruction. And so, you know, we're always going to have a gap. But what you want to look at is how big is that gap? There's a natural proportion of gap, you know, that happens in life normally, but then there's the outside of that. And so it's not for me to say whether that gap is too large or too small for Southington. You know the investment that you've made in your teaching, but there is a gap. And it's probably something that would require a little more analysis for students with disabilities that does not include reading and writing and math because they have so many other outcomes that we want.
Okay.
Don't give out.
You answered the question before I got to ask it, so thank you with that.
Try my best.
The other thing that I just want to express is that thank you for this, by the way.
Sure.
Very enlightening, and I think there's a lot of great information. And again, a lot of numbers. I have no idea how they came about, but I'll take
I'm
your
sure
word for
someone
it.
over here can explain them.
Okay, that's why we have the experts.
That's right.
But I will say, though, that over the years that I've been on the board and seeing where we are now and where we were 25 years ago, when we didn't actively start to pull kids, outplace kids back into the system, we did it for a reason. Okay, we were looking to see how much money we could save. Budgets were tight, and we aimed at the low-hanging fruit first, and we saw the great benefit in that. When you start seeing hundreds of thousands of dollars being saved, you know, net savings by bringing services in, I think even members of the town, the Board of Finance and the town council saw, you know, what a big change it had made financially. We got away from the financial part, and now we start thinking about, well, what's now in the best interest of the kids, and that's, you know, and I'll tell you, we've had great administrators over the years. We have a terrific team right now, and I think we're going to be continuing in that direction. And this piece of, I won't call it literature because it's just a bunch of numbers for me. But this data, I think, is going to help us understand what our needs are going to be and where we need to focus attention. So it's going to be on their shoulders now, and I'm going to keep an eye on them.
Oh.
Mrs. Carmody?
Yeah, just one more comment, and then I'm not going to talk anymore. I promise. Okay.
Her board,
Promise?
not mine, so.
I promise I promise, because we all are very tired. We also have to take into consideration the consequences of the pandemic on special ed. Okay, and we don't talk a lot about that, but that really did have a large effect on the special ed population with emotional, social things that these teachers now had to deal with, and their caseloads became so large. Just want to mention that because I have a great interest in special ed, and they're overworked.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question that they're overworked, and their caseload is very, very high, and pandemic had a large effect on it. That is all I'm going to say, because the rest of them were going to yell at me if I say any more, okay? But thank you. It was a very thorough report. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Short. I'm sorry. So again, like I'm glad this particular slide's
I
up.
can talk about this stuff forever. I know not everyone can, so.
No, well,
be careful,
again, like
'cause I could
it's
be here a
fascinating to me
while.
because again, like my kids went to Hatton.
Okay.
My daughter's still there. We have a lot of programming at Hatton, and my kids have experienced firsthand
Mhm.
of like working with students and being picked to do lunch with students and things like that. So again, like
Sure.
what we do in this town and going back, I'm sorry that I came across as more of like just worried about the numbers.
No,
The
no,
fact
no.
that we're able to keep these kids in town and to be building these relationships in town is phenomenal.
Absolutely.
First and foremost. The one question I had, do you find that because of the pandemic, do you think that that's part of the explanation of that increase in hours? And now I know it's only 3 data points and you have to extrapolate it, but do you
course
find
it
that
is.
it's going to come down now that we're in a more normal situation? No, huh?
I don't think it
Yeah.
will. Nationally,
thinking.
all the research, the trending is not showing promise for a decrease.
Right. Okay.
In fact, it's very heavily swaying towards significant increases.
I'm sure with behavioral issues, things that we don't normally think of as traditional, like special education, right? So, thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. I don't want to.
Thank you.
This is very good information.
I'll take care of it. Thank you,
Did
Dr.
you?
Corva.
Oh. You're looking at
I'm
me.
not going to talk anymore, Caroline.
Famous last words, Mrs. Carmody. Famous last words.
I have one more comment.
He's just being.
No, he's lying. Don't.
She's gonna.
She's like, jeez.
Okay. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the ratification of the Southern Administrators Association contract. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve the contract agreement between the Southington Board of Education and Southington Administrators Association for 3 years, July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2026.
Second.
Hi.
Very quick. I don't know who picked.
Well,
You pick
give
them.
it to Dave because he's mad at me. So give it to Dave.
You did. Give it to David. Okay.
was that? You're giving it.
Do we have to do a roll call vote because it's
Yeah,
a
I
contract
think so.
or no? Can we just do a, no, I don't think so. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I was going to ask a question, but that's okay.
Oh.
A comment.
I'm,
That's all right.
Okay.
No, it's getting close, because I'm going to make the next motion.
no, you're not, because we have one more.
Okay.
Mr.
Move to
O'Shea.
expel student number 2021, 2022, 25 as presented by the administration.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. I'm going to abstain.
Mr. Sharnowski is going to abstain. Go.
To adjourn.
Now you all want to go home.
Oh, here we go. She's grandstanding.
Adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Did you make the motion? Yeah. All right.